give it one more minute for a couple more people to sign on. But thank you all for joining us. We're super excited today. Okay, 12:32 on the dot. So we will go ahead and get started here. I see we already have one question in the chat here. Will the recording be available later? Yes, absolutely. The recording will be available. We will post it to our YouTube page, and following the meeting, we will make sure that all of our presenters' slides and the link to the YouTube page is sent out in an email. So you'll have full access to all the resources presented today. But um, hello, everybody. My name is Brennan Banks. I am a coastal engineer at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in the Jacksonville District Office. I'm the president of the Students and New Professionals chapter and one of the presenters today. I am super excited to be hosting you all and having you all join us for this webinar. In my opinion, I think this is one of the best webinars that we've put on, and we've put on some really good ones. So I'm super excited. The topic for today is national scholarships, fellowships, and grants. So we're going to be highlighting four different, programs within the United States, focused around coastal science, engineering, and policy. So I'm assuming if you're here today, you're either in the coastal field already or aspiring to join and want to hear more about these programs. As one of the presenters, I will not be moderating the session, so I'm going to kick it over to Ben Kamada, who is on our board of directors and helps run our workshop and webinar committee for the Students and New Professionals chapter. As we go through the presentation today, please just make sure that our mics are muted and that we're being respectful to all of our presenters. Um, feel free to drop questions in the chat at any point in the presentation. And then after each presentation, we'll be stopping for a good five minute question and answer session. And then at the very end, whatever time is remaining, we'll leave it for question and answers. But with that, I will kick it off to Ben, and Ben will introduce our first presenter, and we'll get started from there. Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody.
thanks, Brennan, and thanks everybody for being here. Like Brennan said, it's a really exciting presentation on how we can get involved in continuing our education and research opportunities in the coastal field. Have three awesome presenters regarding four different scholarship and research opportunities. First up, Jesse Straub with USCRP and NOAA's NAUS Scholarship or NAUS Fellowship. Sorry about that. So Jesse, if you want to share your slides and drive, that is fine with us.
All right, let's see. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, we've got it.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, I am very excited to be with you all today. I was really excited to receive the invitation to chat with you today about two different opportunities that I am involved with. So my name is Jesse Straub. I am a research oceanographer with the Army Corps of Engineers. I am with our Engineer Research and Development Center, also known as ERDIC. And I sit in our coastal hydraulics lab, but I do not actually sit in Vicksburg. I sit at our field research facility in Duck, North Carolina. So we do a lot of really cool, interesting coastal research here. If anybody's ever interested in learning more about the facility, I'm happy to chat about that as well. Feel free to reach out. I'm also actually currently the acting branch chief here, so learning lots of new things in that role as well. But I am the program manager of the U.S. Coastal Research Program, and so for folks, many of the line probably are aware of the program. I notice a lot of you, but that is a multi-agency organization that really, at the crux of our work, we really hope to support the next generation of coastal researchers and engineers. So I'll talk more about that today, about how we are supporting that and how all you as well can get involved in that if you're interested. But I'm going to start today. I actually started my career previously as a former NOAA Sea Grant Knauss Fellow. And I was a NOAA Sea Grant Knauss Fellow actually right before COVID was hitting and right before the world was going crazy. But it was a really great opportunity to really understand and get my foot in the door about If you're interested in federal service, if you're interested in understanding kind of the more science policy realm of your work and your research, it's a really great opportunity to get that exposure and get that experience. So I will kick it off here. So again, I'll start with an overview and talk about the Knauss Fellowship Program. And I'll note that this is really just from my experience in the fellowship program. You'll talk to different people and they'll have plenty of different experiences. I'll talk through this, but every state Sea Grant program operates differently, and that's who you go through. And so everybody's Knauss Fellowship experience is going to be very different, but I'm happy to share my experience and what I've gone through. But then if other people are interested in learning from other folks as well, I'm happy to also connect you with the vast network of Knauss Fellows that are out there. So yeah, just kind of starting with the Knauss Fellowship overview. So the program is through NOAA. It's a national program. The map here is showing you kind of the 34 different university-based Sea Grant programs that some of you may or may not be aware of. And so the fellowship program it's a really unique program. I've been exposed to a lot of different kind of programs and educational programs, and I would say that this is probably one of the most unique programs where graduate students who are really interested in this ocean and coastal as well as Great Lakes national policy and resources and how those differences and changes in policy and resources and research are affecting outcomes from policy as well. And so it's a really unique opportunity to not only understand the research and the R&D piece and use your PhD or your master's brain in that way, but also to think about and connect that policy and understanding the policy and the resources piece of it as well. So the fellowship matches folks that are graduate students with these host offices. There's two different tracks you can go down. You can go down a legislative track or an executive track where you're paired with an executive branch of the government. The fellowship is located in the Washington, D.C. area, and it's for a 1-year period. I'm going to caveat that I was an executive branch fellow, so I'm going to speak to my side as experience with the executive branch, but there are quite a few legislative fellows that I have worked with and that I know I'm happy to connect folks with if you're interested in learning more about the legislative side. Typically, they're working in a congressman or congresswoman's office specifically on particular policies or on a particular committee. So it's a very different fellowship down that route than an executive branch where you're working with a broad range of federal agencies, right? So those host offices range anywhere from the Army Corps of Engineers, NOAA, EPA, NASA, NSF. So there's lots of different opportunities for host offices for fellows. So I mentioned that it's a 1-year fellowship, but I did also want to highlight that it's a fellowship that's really focused on growing you and growing your career and your interests. So there's a salary and a stipend that's associated with that. There's also a discretionary budget that the fellow gets with relocation and trainings and ways to attend conferences. And there's also a very hefty travel budget for the Knauss Fellows as well. And so that's a big part of the fellowship. Some positions travel a lot more than others. Some have international travel. It just depends on the host office that you are matched with or that you're working with. But one thing I really want to stress is that this fellowship is really based on professional development and really helping you in your career and having you take ownership of that. And so it's a really unique opportunity for that. So that's kind of a broad overview. A little bit more. So what's really cool about the Knauss Fellowship Program is that it's a really vast network of fellows. I've actually run into Knauss Fellows in a lot of really interesting spaces, and it's kind of an immediate connector with folks that you're working with. So it's a really kind of cool way to connect across coastal research and across coastal policy, whether it's at a federal agency, whether it's at an academic institution or a non-government organization. These Knauss Fellows are really kind of spread out all over. So as you can see on the screen here, there's been about 1,577 fellows since 1979. So this is a very established program and has a long history of Knauss Fellows. This picture here is actually my Knauss Fellow class. So you can see all of us there. And that's one thing I wanted to highlight as well, is that I'm still really connected with my Knauss Fellow class and really lean on them with wherever they are in government agencies, or some of them are in state agencies or local governments. So it's a really unique way to kind of really have a network of folks that you work with and that you connect with. So yeah, there's a large vast of different folks that work in different areas that you can really add to your network, which has been great. I'll also mention that it's not only the network of your cohort of class. There's also, lots of different folks who are more than happy to help Canals Fellows and will help you in reaching your career goals, whether it's former Canals Fellows. I've met Canals Fellows that were fellows 20 plus years ago and, are always really interested in helping out former and current Canals Fellows. So it's a really unique aspect that way. And then just some numbers here, right? So, they've done this for 44 years. So it's a very established program and process. There's about 80 different host offices across the Washington, D.C. area. I think that actually might be out of date. There's a little bit more 80 than 80 now. And then thinking about where Canals Fellows go after their fellowship, 465 fellows have been placed in Congress, so working with a congressional representative or on different committees. Over 1,000 have been placed at different federal agencies. And then 50% of alumni actually work in federal agencies after federal government following their fellowship. So there's lots of different career paths and avenues that people can go down, and happy to answer any questions on that. Some of my fellows in my class went into federal agencies right after. Some fellows went back and they had gotten their master's and they went back to get their PhDs. So you can use it as different ways throughout your career. But there's lots of different avenues that folks go down following their fellowship. And I was asked to provide a little bit more information on the process, as well as some of the things that I learned through my experience. So it is a pretty lengthy application process, and I really encourage you to visit their website. I'll put some more information on here on future slides. They do a great job on their website outlining the program, as well as provide a lot of resources for folks to go through with videos and different guides. But the eligibility for Canals Fellows is really any student, regardless of your citizenship, is able to apply. And this is an example of a date range for your degree for if you were to apply for this 2025 application period, but you can get an estimate of date ranges from this. So you have to be in a degree, working towards a graduate degree program, for example, between 2023 fall term through February 15, 2024, for example, from this 2025 timeframe. You also just have to be at an accredited university. And then you have to have interest in ocean, coastal, and Great Lakes resources, as well as those policies that are aligned with those resources and affecting those decisions. I'll talk through this a little bit more too on the following slides, but you have to apply through your state Sea Grant program. And typically, like for example, for this past year, that's usually in mid-February. And they strongly encourage you to reach out to your state Sea Grant program. And that's actually one recommendation that I have for anybody interested in the Canals Fellowship is way in advance, make sure you're making those connections with your state Sea Grant program and not only letting them know of your interest in the program, but if you can, work with the state Sea Grant program, let them know who you are. They're the ones who's really reviewing your application first. And so that gives them the opportunity to know you when you're going through the application process. And I think that helped me feel a lot more comfortable and know folks in my state Sea Grant office before I actually went through the application process. And so I applied through the state of North Carolina. I will highlight that each state Sea Grant program operates very differently. And so if you're in a state Sea Grant program and you want me to help you connect with somebody who's in a different state and learn about their program, and if it operates differently, I'm happy to connect you with that as well. And then if you are in a degree program that isn't in a Sea Grant state, you just need to reach out to the National Sea Grant Office and they'll help you coordinate that process as well. For the application, it's pretty simple. You submit your CV to this application. You have a personal statement, 2 letters of recommendation, a list of plans for your upcoming year, classes, work, internships, as well as transcripts. I'll highlight for all of these application materials, I put a link here to the Canals Student Guide. The guide does a really good job of going through all of the pieces that they're really looking for in each of these, as well as the criteria that they're reviewing you on. So I highly recommend that you go through that guide and really make sure that you're kind of hitting on all the points that the guide is mentioning for each of these different pieces. And that guide, sometimes it changes from year to year, but you can look at their website at this point to really see what they're looking for right now. And so to talk a little bit more about the process, I kind of hinted at this. Before you are even thinking about applying for the Canals Fellowship program, I would definitely, visit the Sea Grant website, look at the Sea Grant programs. Also highly recommend looking at the Canals blog. A lot of us have created blog posts from our experiences and things that we've learned and things that we recommend. So that's a really good resource to learn about the program more, as well as what fellows have gotten out of the fellowship. Really start thinking about your package and what you're going to include in that package, what kind of things you want to write in your personal statement, and the impact, as well as who might be the best for your letter of recommendations. Another thing that I would highlight that's really helped me as well is just keeping an up-to-date idea of what's going on within Sea Grant, the types of things that they're working on, what they're doing. You can do that through, going and looking at their newsletters, looking at all of their social media accounts, and just getting an idea of the types of work that's going on across Sea Grant within your state Sea Grant program, but the National Sea Grant Office as well. And then before, I mentioned this too, before the announcement comes out for the fellowship, before you apply, really make sure that you're connecting with your state Sea Grant program so that they can help you not only navigate the process of the proposals, but because they'll really be helping you in understanding what they'll need for you to submit through the process, because you'll go through a state review process. And if you make it past that state review process, then you'll go on to the national competition, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. Yeah, so this kind of goes into a little bit more detail about the interview process, as well as placement week, which is a very fun, different experience. So as I mentioned, you'll submit your materials to your state Sea Grant program. There'll be a state Sea Grant program selection process. Again, each program is a little bit different. In my personal experience, they reached out to me and let me know that they were interested in, and then within a few weeks, I came in for an interview. And that, I think most state Sea Grant programs operate that way, but keep in mind to just check and make sure the deadlines of your state Sea Grant program, because some programs have different deadlines than others. So make sure to keep it up to date on that as well. And then this is where each state Sea Grant program, there's lots of applicants that come in every year from every state. And the program has the option to nominate and select up to 6 applicants to go up to the National Sea Grant Office for that competition. And so each program operates really differently. So they're able to select those, nominate those, and then they can go up to the national competition to be evaluated separately in a different evaluation process. So there's really 2 tiers of evaluation that go on there. Then the National Sea Grant Office holds its own selection panel to determine who those finalists will be. And then your state Sea Grant program will notify you if you're selected in the summer timeframe after applying in mid-February. So the next thing I wanted to mention is after you go through this process, and if you're selected as a finalist after each of those levels, you have this really awesome opportunity to decide first if you want to be a legislative or an executive fellow, and the National Sea Grant Office will help you through that process. And then you get the opportunity to go through placement week, which is a really cool opportunity. It's usually in the October timeframe for executive fellows or January timeframe for legislative fellows. And this is where you're basically doing interviews with host offices to understand the types of positions that are out there, the best fit for you as a fellow, and then the office's best fit for them as a host office as well. So I think the process is a little bit different now. Post-COVID, it's all virtual, actually. Pre-COVID, when I did my process, we actually used to travel to NOAA, and we used to go around to each of the offices in the Washington, D.C. area. I think I did 18 interviews over 3 days to give you kind of an idea of what happens there. But it's a really unique opportunity because, even if you don't place with a particular office, the folks that you interview with, I still work with those folks today. So it really helps you get your foot in the door for different opportunities, even if you're not being placed with that particular office. So it's really unique and a cool way to learn about all the research and work that goes on across these federal agencies. And then after that, there's a matching process that happens where the Knauss Fellow is then matched with the host office based on ranking that both of those offices submitted. And then I just kind of wanted to highlight some info that I learned from my experience and recommendations. Again, I mentioned this earlier, start with your state Sea Grant program and connect with them early, learn about their program, see if you can connect with the director of that state Sea Grant program. I didn't mention this, but part of your application process is that your state Sea Grant program will write you a letter of recommendation. So if they know you, then you're more connected to that process and it's easier for them as well. I also really highly recommend, this helped me a lot, reaching out and connecting with the vast Knauss Fellow Alumni Network. You are all more than happy to reach out to me. My email is on the last slide here. If you're interested, and I'm happy to connect you with other fellows as well. Ask about their experiences, what they learned, what they liked, what maybe they didn't like, and see if it connects and resonates with you and what you're interested in. Also, if you're interested in submitting an application, definitely have former Canals Fellows review that application. I think I had something like 5 or 6 former Canals Fellows review my application just to get different perspectives and thoughts. And your state secret program can help you with that as well. Also recommend reviewing the application materials and reviewing the criteria really before pulling that application together, because that kind of helps frame it and understand what the application is really looking for. Do your research and prepare for interviews. Through the Canals Fellowship process, you go through a lot of interviews, so it's a really good way to practice that. But I think people really notice if you prepare and you really know some about that office, as well as knowing about what the Canals Fellowship is ahead of those interviews, and that's really helpful. And then I also want to highlight a key takeaway. The Canals Fellowship year is about you, so really take advantage of all the opportunities. I didn't put all the pictures up here, but I had some really unique opportunities to travel to a lot of different places and meet a lot of really unique people and talk with some different kinds of programs that I never would have experienced before. So I would really encourage folks that if you are interested in the Canals Fellowship and you do go through the process and become a finalist and a fellow, to really take advantage of all the opportunities that are out there. So that's just kind of an overview of the Canals Fellowship and my experience and what I learned. And here's some of the resources that I mentioned. Again, the website has a lot of different resources that I would highly recommend looking at: student guides, application guides, lots of different videos, Canals 101, and the Canals blogs that can give you a different perspective on how fellows enjoyed their fellowship and what kind of stuff fellows actually are working on. So yeah, again, happy to be a resource for anybody that's interested. Feel free to reach out anytime about the Canals Fellowship and any questions that folks have. I'm going to transition a little bit and talk about and put on my program manager hat for the U.S. Coastal Research Program and really talk about some of the student engagement opportunities for USCRP that some of you have been involved with, but others are welcome to be involved with, and I hope you're interested in being involved in the future. So the U.S. Coastal Research Program, one of our main goals is to really support the next generation of coastal researchers and engineers. And so we do that through lots of different ways of supporting our students. These are just some specific examples, but in addition to all of our student engagement opportunities, we also specifically fund students on research grants that are coming through academic institutions, right? So if you have an academic advisor that you're working with, they'll submit a proposal to our request for proposals. And each of those proposals are required to at least have one student. Majority of them have a lot more on their proposals. And so that's the main way we support our students. And we've supported over 250 students over the past decade, and actually have seen those students now transition into the coastal workforce. So it's a really great opportunity for you to really understand and get involved in the research side of things, and happy to answer questions on that if anybody's interested in that. But some of the ways that we are really do some student engagement opportunities, we coordinate and support student sessions at conferences. So this is from our ASPPA, where we do different sessions. This was actually a student session that some of you who were involved in. So that's an example of some of the opportunities that we have. This past year, we had a student training and professional development application. I'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide, but we are always looking for ways to increase participation for students and ways that we can support students in different ways outside of just being on a normal research grant. And then we also have volunteer opportunities. So a good example is this past June, we held our decadal visioning workshop, and we had some folks on the line here too, volunteer as note takers and volunteer to be involved in that workshop. We've had past opportunities where students worked with our DUNEX or Deering Nearshore Event Experiment, and they were able to be involved in that process, and we funded for them to travel actually here to the FRF to work on that. So there's always opportunities that are coming up with the USCRP that are outside of just the normal student grant opportunity that we're looking forward to expanding in the future as well. And so this is kind of what I mentioned as well. We've supported over 282 students across PhDs, masters, and undergrads from 61 different academic institutions and states. And they're actually transitioning now into the coastal workforce, which is what we're really excited to see. If you're interested in learning any more about our projects and some of the student work and what's been supported, feel free to check on our database and look at the projects there. Do want to also mention other ways is we sometimes have students write blog posts, which we've done quite often as well. Some of these examples here are some of the student spotlights we have. But if anyone's interested in writing a student blog post and would like to learn more about that, feel free to reach out. We're always looking for students who are interested and want to volunteer there. And then this is what I mentioned, the Student Training and Professional Development Week that we just hosted here, which was in Vicksburg, Mississippi at the Erdick Field, at the Erdick Coastal Hydraulics Lab that we just hosted this past October. And we had actually 26 students come for that from 19 different universities. And it was a really unique opportunity where, some of the students were part of our sediment transport collaborative laboratory work, and other students applied through that application process that I mentioned earlier. And students got to meet federal researchers, talk about potential career paths, do a coastal design challenge where they were actually working and designing a solution to a coastal challenge in the flume. That's what's going on in that picture there with those reef balls. And we've gotten a lot of great feedback from students. And so we're hoping to continue opportunities like this and partner with other federal agencies to be able to do this at other federal facilities as well. So that's just an example. So yeah, I kind of just gave a broad overview there for both the Knaus Fellowship and for USERP and opportunities there. But I encourage you all, if you are interested in USERP and staying involved, to connect with us, become a USERP member, and you can get information about all of our opportunities, all of our things that volunteer opportunities that might be coming up, as well as feel free anytime. My email is there to reach out to me either about USERP or the Knaus Fellowship. So happy to answer questions here if there's time.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Jesse. Ben, I'll let you start off. But again, I just want to say thank you so much. That was an incredible presentation. I don't know, in my undergrad and grad, I was almost obsessed with the Knaus Fellowship. Obviously didn't go that way, but it's great to really hear your review on it. But Ben, I'll let you moderate here.
Yeah, same thing, Jesse, thank you so much. And to everyone, all of the links that she had in the presentation here will be available once we get that sent out. So you'll be able to access those. But then if anybody has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or just unmute if nobody else is talking.
We did also get some general questions from our registration form that we can address as well. But I'll give everybody a second to think of any questions, or feel free to raise your hands afterwards, or just come off mute. But give everybody a couple more seconds here. So one question that we got on the registration that was pretty general to all of the speakers today. We actually got a decent amount. I'll start off with this one. What helped you prepare to complete your application? I know you spoke a lot about, having previous or current Knaus Fellows review your application. Maybe you could highlight some of the ways you got in contact with them and what that process was like.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, I was able to get in contact with former Knaus Fellows by kind of connecting with that network through my state Sea Grant program. So, I let them know early that I was interested, and they had said, "Oh, well, why don't you reach out to this person who was, a former Knaus Fellow who you can talk to and kind of mentor you through that process." So that was one way that I had connections with former Knaus Fellows. Another way that I had connections was actually through previous employment, where folks were, as I mentioned, there's a broad network. And so other folks that were working at other agencies were Knaus Fellows. And so I just reached out and said, hey, I'm interested in applying. Would you mind reviewing my application or talking me through that process? So that's actually one thing that I would highlight is don't be afraid to reach out to folks. I've kind of found out through my career that no matter what, folks are usually really willing to help you out and or point you in the direction of somebody that might be able to help you. So.
Yeah, awesome. I'll highlight this in my segment as well for the Smart Scholarship, but I absolutely agree and really want to echo. I think almost any federal employee I've interacted with, especially as a student perspective, is always super helpful, and like they want to help you. So don't feel scared to reach out.
Yeah, and then Jesse, just one more question. For your application, and especially in your experience, how did you select what attributes and experiences to highlight, and kind of what ways were you able to emphasize those for some things that might not be directly research related, or kind of figuring out how to make that look good?
Yeah, that is a great question too. So one thing I would really suggest again is looking at the review criteria on the student guide and seeing. I think the first thing that I really did is I took that review criteria and then I just put bullet points under that of like what I did that addressed those particular review criteria and how I could really speak to that. And that really helped me kind of outline and frame what I was trying to write in the application process. But I think one thing that's really interesting about the Canals Fellowship is that it's really focusing on trying to get you that real world experience from a lot of these folks are coming out of school, don't really have much experience in work yet. And so really taking the opportunity to think about the types of skills that they might be looking for when, from a early career person, whether it's developing leadership skills, whether it's having, and folks usually have that opportunity when they're in graduate school, right? Or having the opportunity to particular lead a research project or some type of initiative that you might have done in graduate school. And for me, I think that's what really helped my application quite a bit is be able to tie the skills and the types of things that I was able to lead in graduate school with the types of things that they were looking for in the application.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If anybody else has last minute questions, feel free to unmute, but otherwise, Jesse, thank you so much. That was wonderful highlight of both programs. And I think a ton of good information that maybe people need a little bit of time to digest. So people, as you're coming up with questions or thinking, please feel free to reach out to Jesse. She has her emails at the end of the presentations that we'll send out.
Again, feel free to just drop any questions in the chat. I actually have one more question for you, Jesse, before we move on. Again, so I was looking at again, like almost obsessed with the program during my undergrad and early in grad school. And you had just gotten awarded it, and I remember you getting like all these highlights and stuff. So like I looked at your profile a lot, like while I was looking at the award, and it's been very cool over the last couple of years to catch up with you at conferences and everything like that. I think you've clearly done an incredible job early in your career and have really risen to some awesome roles and at CHL, which isn't easy to do. So my question for you is, how has the program helped you in your career, and it like how have you leveraged the fact that you were a Knaus fellow and now running USCRP to get to where you are now?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That's a really good question. So I would say that the biggest thing that I think really helped me in my career and supported me through the fellowship was the really great connections and mentors that I had through that process. So a perfect example is that when I was a Canals Fellow, I was working directly with Dr. Julie Rosati, who was a Civil Works Technical Director. And so that immediately kind of gave me this broad perspective of how the organization run and how the Army Corps of this large, vast organization, how all the different pieces of that organization fit together. And so for me, I think that's what really helped me in my career is being able to really lean on some really great mentors that help me understand the different processes for these large, complex organizations, but then also kind of connect me to other folks to really expand my network. Because that's one thing that I think I've learned through the Canals Fellowship, but also working here at ERDIC is that, the people that you know and the network that you have that you takes time to develop. But when you need something or when you need support or when you need to work with a particular group, you're always going to lean on that network that you have. And so being able to develop that early in your career will really help you a lot further in your career.
Thank you. To stay on track, I'm going to hand the screen sharing over to Brennan Banks, who is our Students and New Professionals president, but he is also a Department of Defense Smart Scholar through his time as a graduate student at Florida Tech and currently working for the United States Army Corps Jacksonville District. So go ahead, Brennan.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, awesome. All right. So like Ben said, again, my name is Brennan. So I was awarded the Department of Defense SMART Scholarship, which stands for Science, Mathematics, and Research for Transformation. My sponsoring facility is the Jacksonville District, and I work in the Coastal Navigation Plan Formulation section. So a quick agenda for my presentation today. So I'll be going brief overview of what the Smart Scholarship Program is, eligibility and benefits. I'll talk to you about my journey through the application process and now, working for the Corps, and then give some application insights. So the Smart Scholarship is a scholarship for a service program. And so what that means is the Department of Defense will be paying and fully funding your education for anywhere between 1 to 5 years, a maximum 5 years, and then you have a 1-to-1 ratio of scholarship to service commitment, which I will say for all of the similar types of programs that fully fund um, your education, at least within the government, a 1-to-1 ratio is the lowest I have personally seen. I've seen 1-to-2 ratios, 1-to-3. So a 1-to-1 ratio, it really is not bad. In my scenario, the Department of Defense funded my master's program, which was 2 years long, and so I just graduated in May, and so I'm five. I started working in June, so I'm 5 months into completing my service commitment of 2 years. One thing I'd like to know, and um, won't talk about too much, but um, the Smart Scholarship has really broadened its eligibility criteria as far as education experience. So just recently, in this last year, I actually just found this out while preparing for this presentation. They've opened it up to students that don't have any previous college experience. So that could be, high school seniors that are preparing to go into college, or say you just came off of active duty in the military, you would be great candidates for this program as well. So that would be through the LEMS Memorial Smart Scholarship Program, whereas the just typical Smart Scholarship program is for those that are currently enrolled. For both of these, for you to be eligible, you do need to show proof of enrollment and or proof of acceptance to where you'll be attending. So you gotta have a plan before you are are applying here. But quick about me. So I am a student athlete and now a professional kind of, not in that sense, not a professional athlete, but a professional in my career and an athlete on the side. I love sports. I play lacrosse. I played at Florida Tech and now for the Puerto Rico national team. So it's a really big side portion of my life. My favorite coastline is the Space Coast. If anybody's ever been on that side of the Atlantic coast of Florida, in between like Toco and Jensen Beach, I think that is like the best hidden gem out there. And I love to skimboard. So Coastal Field definitely suits me very, very well. Again, I was awarded the Smart Scholarship in 2022 during the spring semester of my senior year, and then my funding kicked in August at the start of my master's. Um, and the Smart Scholarship has been honestly like life changing. I really did not have any plans to attend my master's if it wasn't going to be funded, and the Smart Scholarship just absolutely like blessed me with that opportunity to attend. Again, fully funded. There is some stipend and internship opportunities that I'll get to in a little bit later, but it's allowed me to pursue a career with the Army Corps of Engineers of the Jacksonville district, which I would say I'm a pretty unique case in that I knew as early as freshman year that I wanted to be a coastal engineer, and as early as sophomore, junior year that I wanted to work for the Army Corps of Engineers. I at least was interested in that. So things have really worked out, and I'm very appreciative of the Smart Scholarship for that. So again, some of the opportunities that are available through the Smart Scholarship, again, it's full tuition. Obviously that looks different depending what school you are. Some schools are more or less expensive. It doesn't matter. Whatever school you're at, fully funded tuition. There's a range here for the annual stipend between 30 and 46,000 dollars a year. That's just based off of if you're an undergrad, master's, or PhD student. So undergrads unfortunately get a little less. Masters are right there in the middle. I think we were getting about 38 or 42. It got bumped up. It's gotten bumped up every couple of years too, so that's pretty nice. And then 46 for PhD. You get $1,000 a year. I think that just got bumped up too. So I think it's 1,500 a year for books and healthcare allowance each year. You have a summer internship at your sponsoring facility. You get an experienced mentor. I absolutely love my mentor. He's incredible. He was a huge help on my thesis, and we work very closely. together now while, I'm completing my service commitment, and he's been a big part of my journey. And then civilian employment. So that's one of the really cool parts about it, is like, you get the scholarship, you go complete however many years of school, and once you get out, you're gonna have a really awesome job just there waiting for you. So it really takes a lot of pressure off your shoulders. Well, you got other friends stressing out about job opportunities and stuff. It's nice to know that you're already locked in. So for some of the eligibility and program requirements, again, they've really opened this up. So um now, most recently, you can be a citizen of the United States, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, or the United Kingdom and still be eligible for the program. You have to be at least 18 years or older, so high school seniors, and that is by award date as well. So you have time. High school seniors should be eligible, are eligible. You have to maintain a minimum GPA of 3.0, but that shouldn't be hopefully too hard. I think once you're in the program as well, there is some buffer room where you can go on probation if you don't, but I'm sure everybody here today will maintain that 3.0. Obviously it has to be STEM related, which I'll get into in a little bit. Again, it's 1 to 5 years, min and max. um Security clearance for coastal engineers, we really don't need to worry about that. And yeah, you have to be willing to work for the Army Corps of Engineers or whatever department in the DoD that you get selected for. So there's 24 STEM disciplines that the scholarship is open to. I went ahead and circled some of the ones that I think, as us being in the coastal field, that we'd be most interested in. Um, our program in undergrad and master's was actually in ocean engineering. So technically, I applied through the naval architecture and ocean engineering, but in my application and um, on my personal essays, I made it very clear that I was pursuing coastal engineering. So here's the timeline for the applications and awardees. Unfortunately, the application window, you can see, closes in about a month. So that is very, very quick turnaround if you are considering applying for this cohort or this year. But so I really want to highlight this to at least get it on everybody's radars, and so you'll have another year to prepare for it, get all your things together, network and everything like that. So maybe some of you have already applied, and that's great as well. So again, applications due early December. The interview and selection process can go all the way from January to April. When I had applied, again, things have changed a little bit, but when I had applied, there was a semifinalist round and a finalist round. I believe they went away with the semifinalist round, so it goes straight to the finalists, which essentially means that like your application will go through. I imagine there's still some backdoor thumbs up, thumbs down. Do we want to open this applicant up for interviews? If you get the thumbs up, in my case, if you got selected for the semifinalists to be a semifinalist, at that point, your application is viewable by anybody in the Department of Defense, or obviously they're looking at if you put down the Army, Air Force, or Navy, and I can say you'll only get contacted by somebody within the agency that you selected, and then you go through your interview process, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. Get awarded in April, and then in between May and really August is when you're going through your site visits, orientation with the sponsoring facility, and a ton of paperwork. But that's exciting stuff as well. And August is really the date where your scholarship begins. You start getting your stipend, and you're back in classes and everything like that. Okay, so tips for a competitive application. So, like Jesse said, this program, there are, a ton of resources out there that I really highly encourage you all to go seek out and visit. I unfortunately don't have the links, but I will make sure I add some links to the presentation before we send it out. But there's a ton of videos out there on YouTube from the Smart Scholarship program, and just some other people that have applied or have been awarded in the past, previous webinars, and there's a ton of good content on the website. Your references are really key. I believe you get minimum 2 references and up to 3. So you really want to make sure you're getting a diverse group of references that can account for your character, your drive, and academic qualifications. So you never just want to have just professors, or if you're involved in sports or some other extracurriculars, like make sure you're getting those references as well, because that really speaks to what you add beyond just being an academic or a researcher, which is really important too. Your personal statement is probably the most important part of your application. This is where you really get to show off like all your previous research experience, how that applies to the Department of Defense mission or the Army Corps mission. I'll try to tailor this talk more to Army Corps and Civil Works, since that's what I imagine most of us are interested in. That's what I work in, obviously. So yeah, I like you got to do your research here. You got to know, what programs your national programs you're interested in. Do your research on the sponsoring facilities. While you are submitting your application, there is a location for you to identify your top 3 sponsoring facilities. So you should tailor it to those 3 at a bare minimum, and I think you get up to 5 or 6 that you get to identify. But those top 3 are really the ones they're looking at and considering in your application. Again, yeah, so your facility preferences, like that's huge. You got to do your research, know what type of programs they have, what their missions are. All of that is available on your sponsoring facilities website. So for me, my sponsoring facility again is the Jacksonville district of the Army Corps of Engineers. So I spent a lot of time on their website looking at their civil works processes, looking at their beach nourishment programs and dredging and everything like that. um, so when you're looking at all the different sponsoring facilities that are out there, this is just a clip I took from the website. Again, I really, really highly recommend you do a deep dive through the website, because there's some great stuff out there. So this is one of their interactive maps they have that you can use to filter, different sponsoring facilities. I highly recommend you check this actively, because it does change. Like, I originally applied for the Smart Scholarship my freshman year, and I was not awarded it. Um, and I reapplied during my senior year and was awarded. But in between that time, it had grown so much, and even since 2022 when I was awarded, it's grown even more. So I have it filtered right now to civil engineering, Bachelor of Science. But coastal science and engineering is so interdisciplinary that I like when you're going through this, like I recommend you look at oceanography, look at geosciences, look at ocean engineering and everything like that. And it'll populate the map with that, and you can select each facility. It'll have a great little overview of what their missions are, and you can see if it resonates with you, if that's something that you're interested in. And if it is, then it'll point you into the direction of that facility's website, and you can do some more details there. But getting into the interview process, so um, again, once you kind of get the thumbs up, or in my case, go through the semifinalist round, your application is open for review and interviews by the entire Department of Defense. Again, if you put down you want to be in the Army, Army Corps of Engineers, that's where your focus is going to be. That's who will be contacting you. I cannot stress enough how important I think it is to network before you even apply, and certainly after you apply. Like I mentioned earlier, in my experience, in my opinion, I think coastal scientists and engineers in general, but specifically in the federal government, are so willing and open to helping students and new professionals. Um, I set up a ton of casual little virtual coffee chats that honestly end up being like little semi just casual interviews, like, and that just allows you to learn so much more and gain such a better insight about the sponsoring facility that you're interested in, and you can take all that and put that on your application. Everything that you learned from that conversation, they'll point you in the right direction of where to conduct some more research. But yeah, at a bare minimum, the 3 facilities that you put down as interested in, that's what you should be interested in. So at the bottom of the slide here, like I just put down some of the ones that I talked about in my application. You always hear people talk about like buzzwords, and the federal government has its buzzwords, and Army Corps is definitely is no different. So, you know, regional sediment management, coastal storm risk management, engineering with nature were some of the key things that I was really interested in. And you know, that allows the reviewers to see that you've done your homework, you're aware of their programs and what you know, kind of initiatives are high level interests and priorities of the district. Um, so yeah, see your question. I'll get to that in the question and answer portion, but thank you for that. That's a good question. Okay, so here's the scholarship life cycle. They break it up into 4 phases. So phase 0 is when you're getting awarded. Phase 1 is during academic pursuit. Phase 2 is what I'm in now, post graduation. Phase 3 is when you're done with your service commitment. So starting off in phase 0, you put together an awesome application. You crushed all your interviews, and now you've been awarded. So this is that phase in between May to August. So this is a really critical time to make sure that the sponsoring facility that has selected you is a good fit for you. So during my interview process, like I'll say I know people, I've seen people in forums that didn't get any interviews and they still got selected. So that can happen. If you get a couple of interviews, I would assume you probably are going to get selected. But just because you don't, like, don't let that discourage you. You just gotta wait out the process. Sometimes people get awarded and end up declining, and you might be on that alternate list. So don't be too discouraged. And again, you can always apply again. But the site facility or the facility I had initially put down as my number one, I got an interview with them. Ended up getting an interview after that with the Jacksonville district and decided that was a way better fit for me and my interest. And you know, I was able to communicate that and make that change, and that's where I ended up. And I'm really happy with that decision. But you can it's gonna get harder, but you know, you can work that out during this phase 0 of your awardee. This is a time to make your changes. So, you know, if you end up changing your major, I know a couple of smart scholars that went from doing ocean engineering and to doing engineering management, which, you know, management, you might not really think of that as a STEM field, but it is. It is absolutely a STEM field. And that counts in the SMART program. You know, let's say you change your schools. I wouldn't say it's a bad idea at all to, like, you know, maybe you have a 4+1 program and it's really easy for you to get into the school that you're doing your undergrad in, but you know, you have your eyes set on maybe a bigger name master university for your master's or PhD. You can change schools, absolutely. And you can even change your degree length. You can do this in phase 1 as well, and I'll get to that in a little later. But again, during this time, you're going through orientation, you're doing a site visit, which is super, super important. You want to make sure you can try to do that in person if you can. Again, COVID kind of switched up some things. A lot of things turned virtual, but if you're close to your sponsoring facility, they more likely than not will be able to work with you to make sure that's in person. You're usually having quarterly check-ins with your supervisor, and a ton of paperwork. I also really want to highlight that you can do an internship during the summer that you are awarded. So before that August, in between, you know, that May and August, you are allowed to do an internship. I ended up doing an internship at the Coastal Hydraulics Lab, which was completely unrelated to my SMART scholarship, but very, very beneficial for me in the long run. All right, so now it's August. You've been awarded. You know, you're locked in with your sponsoring facility. Again, during phase 0, like, you can work to change that, but hopefully you're getting it right on the first time. I think more often than not, you do get that right on the first time. So this is the opportune time for you to leverage relationships with your sponsoring facility for research. So there's no requirement for you to do a thesis. I know plenty that have done non-thesis track, and there's nothing wrong with doing a non-thesis track at all. I think whatever you do though, somewhere or another, you're gonna end up doing research. And I highly recommend that, you know, you try to work with your sponsoring facility to do something that is of interest to them, because it's going to make it so much more meaningful. That opens up their resources to you. So, you know, now instead of you just, you know, working with your lab, which, you know, may already be connected with a lot of federal agencies, maybe it's not. You know, if it's not, now that becomes open to you. In my situation, I was able to pretty much craft my own you know, thesis, which I used a numerical model, so it wasn't super expensive. I didn't have a ton of like physical modeling I needed to do, but I worked with the Coastal Hydraulics Lab and my sponsoring facility, so the Jacksonville district. to do a thesis that it ended up being really great. And again, they were both open for me to use resources and contact them and get a lot of their data from previous studies, and so that was really beneficial for me. Again, the program is really growing, and so now you do have an opportunity to study abroad during your academic pursuit. That is an opportunity for you. I would continue to do site visits if possible, especially if your service or your scholarship is going to be for multiple years and it's going to be a while before you're there full time. It's great to just stay involved and stay engaged with them. Continue to do quarterly check-ins. There's, again, always a ton of paperwork. One thing I really want to highlight is that while you're in your academic pursuit, there is no requirement for you to do any work. All like literally your only requirement is to do your paperwork, do your check-ins when necessary, and stay above a 3.0, which means that odds are more likely than not, if you are a smart scholar, it means that you're somebody who is a high achieving student or professional, and you do have the capability to do research beyond just your academic pursuits. That's definitely a lot easier in your master's or PhD, but what I'm getting at is that you can get paid for other work. Obviously, there's some ethics behind that, and you need to be communicating that. But I myself was able to get paid through a research lab at my school while getting my stipend. And there's no problem with that. You just need to make sure you're communicating everything and being transparent. Also, again, you can still make award adjustments to school, length of programs. I ended up lengthening my master's from a year and a half to 2 years, so 4 semesters, and that went through no problems, no questions asked. All right, so now you've graduated and you're in a phase 2 service commitment. So this is where I am now. I'm 5 months into my service commitment at the Jacksonville district, and I cannot say enough great things about it. I absolutely love the team I'm working with. Again, my mentor and I are very well connected. He was a huge part of my thesis. He is still my mentor, and I talk to him every single day. He's my technical lead for my program and the coastal navigation planning section. And so this is where you are committing or fulfilling that 1-to-1 service commitment ratio. So again, I had 2 years paid for, so now I have a 2-year commitment. I really would like to emphasize that you guys should continue to leverage your relationships and your status. Like, it's a really cool thing that you're coming in as a smart scholar. And for that first couple months, like every introduction you make, at least with my team, is like, my section chief would introduce me and be like, and this is our smart scholar. And there's some weight that goes with that. So, people are going to be looking at you to be high achieving. So, take that on and go be high achieving, go take on awesome programs and look out for more research. There is a really cool grant opportunity that the Smart Scholarship provides for smart scholars once you are in phase 2 of your service commitment, which is the SEEDS and CREATE grants. I'm not going to get into them too much today, but just know that you can get up to $120,000 a year in research funds to support your time on a research project of your choice. Obviously, you'd benefit from having it, kind of be within the mission of your sponsoring facility. They obviously have to co-sign and sign off on it and be supportive of it. But this really allows you to go, continue to grow in your research capabilities, and you're going to be the primary investigator on it, which is almost unheard of for someone to be the primary investigator within their first couple years of working. So highly encourage you guys to look out for that. The SEED grant, specifically for PhDs, the CREATES grant is open to anybody. All right, so now you're done with your service commitment and your options are open, and that's it. You can, hopefully the goal is that you've found a place that you really enjoy. At least maybe it's not your facility, maybe it's within the agency as a whole. The Army Corps of Engineers at least has a very big distinction on, like, once you're in and you're free to move around. So maybe you want to go to a different district, you want to check out the research facilities, that's great. You have that opportunity to, you're encouraged to. Or if you want to leave, your service commitment is done, and you can go explore other opportunities with private sector and stuff like that. You're still eligible for the SEED and CREATES grant as well. They would love to use you as a tool to help recruit new talent. So hopefully you want to stay involved. So really quickly, some life as a DoD civilian employee. Again, I want to emphasize you are a civilian. You are not, out there fighting wars or anything like that. Like you're a civilian, just like any of your other friends that work for private industry. You just work for the Department of Defense. So yeah, non-military government employees. Um, some benefits they want to highlight is it's job stability. It's mobile. You can move around districts and research um, development centers. Everybody talks about federal healthcare. It is really awesome. I know we're young and a lot of people don't care about that, but it is important and it is a really good healthcare benefits. Paid time off is good. The flexible work schedules are amazing. We have 4 hours. You can sign in anywhere between 6 and 9, so there's not like a hard set plan. And then really good retirement plans as well. That is all I have. I will also add my contact information, but yeah, I'll stop there for questions. I see we have one in the chat from Sydney. What did you change between your first and second application? That's a great question. I would say so. My first application, I did get through the semi-finalist round, which was a big deal for me at the time as a freshman. So in my head, like if you get through the semi-finalist round, that is the department saying like you qualify to work at one of our facilities. And then from there, it's really just a question of whether or not your application is of interest to a sponsoring facility and if they want to pick you up. So once you're in that pool of thumbs up, um, it's open for anybody to come wanting to interview you or select you. So I would say the main things that I really changed is my networking. Um, I won't say tactics, but like just I mean, yeah, like my network grew a lot. I would really dedicate a lot of that to ASBPA. Again, they've been a huge part of my career, especially through undergrad. So I, got in contact with a lot of pretty high level Army Corps employees, and some just at the districts, and that's fine as well. I'll say for the Jacksonville district, I actually ended up getting an email my senior year from my mentor, who also went to Florida Tech, so he was an alumni, and he put out an email to our school, just saying that there's job opportunities. Um, I'm one of the first Smart Scholars at my Jacksonville district. I think there's like 3 or 4 now. But I went to him and was like, "Hey, I'm really interested in this program. Have you heard of it? Do who I could get in contact with to talk more about it?" And uh, we had talked before as well, so we kind of already had a relationship. But so I probably wouldn't start it off like that. Like I'd a little more casual, but again, if you have questions about that or want to know, how you can get in contact with people, please feel free to use me as a resource. And I can do my best to help connect you throughout the Army Corps.
Thanks so much, Brennan. If anybody else has other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or unmute. Give it a few minutes here. And Brennan, while people are thinking, I know that you talked a lot about your sponsoring facility being the Jacksonville district, but since starting in your service commitment, have you gotten the opportunity from your role to collaborate with other districts and kind of work within the Army Corps? Or are you limited to just the Jacksonville district?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the work we do is, yeah, it's nationwide. Especially, I will say, just a little plug for the Jacksonville district. We are, as far as the districts go, so not talking about the research facilities. As far as districts goes, we are by far the busiest district. So, especially for our civil works programs and coastal storm risk management, navigation projects, we are very busy and so busy that we end up brokering out some of our studies to other districts. So we have a couple studies going on in Miami right now that we're working with the Norfolk district and Savannah district. So yeah, there's definitely times where you end up working and getting to network with other districts. I'll say Jacksonville district is also one of the research proving grounds. So sometimes research projects will come along from ERDIC and from CHL. They want to try to implement that into the field, and they might work with some of the districts to do that. And then you also always have trainings, annual trainings. that again, our core wine, that's a great way to network and meet people around the nation. And we also have districts all around the world, really. I think we have like 4 or 5 across Europe, one in Japan, and district in Alaska as well. So yeah, definitely opportunities for travel.
Awesome, thank you. And I know you also said that being introduced as a Smart Scholar in your district has kind of carried a little bit of weight. What's the biggest thing you would emphasize for students that may apply here or already be a Smart Scholar of kind of how to leverage that moving into your role as a full-time employee of the Department of Defense now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, generally, right? Like you're coming in as a young professional, like, you should be coming in with a lot of energy, ready to do the work. No task is too big or too small for you. Um, obviously you gotta communicate where you need assistance and everything like that, but that's why I have mentors and supervisors. But I think coming in as a Smart Scholar is like just comes in with like a level of respect that like you've been vetted through a wider program and application process and were ultimately selected. And so yeah, I would just say like when you're doing your work, make sure that your work reflects the program well. And yeah, again, like if you are awarded some of those scholarship programs as well, like that is huge for you to be a primary investigator within your first 2 years. Like that is insane. So, hopefully you are interested in those programs and go for that as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brennan. If nobody has any other questions, I will go ahead and move on to our final presenter. So again, thank you so much, Brennan. If anybody has follow-up questions, I'm sure Brennan would be happy to answer those after the fact. But our final presenter is Rachel Schaefer. She is a representative from the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program. So want to give a big welcome to Rachel. And Brennan, if you want to stop sharing so that Rachel is able to, that would be great.
Should be good to share. All right, there we go.
Yeah. Do you see my slideshow on your screens?
We do. We see the
Okay.
presenter view, but that is
Oh.
still whatever you want. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for inviting me here today. My name is Rachel Schaefer. I'll be talking about the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program and my experiences as a fellow. So briefly talking about myself, I'm currently a postdoctoral researcher at Boston University, funded by the U.S. National Park Service, working on a project relating to restoring meadows of aquatic vegetation along the U.S. East Coast, specifically seagrass. I've included a photo of seagrass here. Earlier this year, I graduated from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology with a PhD in civil and environmental engineering, doing some hydrodynamics, environmental fluid mechanics research. And I graduated from the University of Delaware with a civil engineering degree in 2019 and did some undergraduate coastal engineering research there and applied to the NSF GRFP program, GRFP, during my senior undergraduate year, so during the 2018 to 2019 cycle. So to give an overview of the Graduate Research Fellowship Program, it provides financial support for graduate studies in STEM or STEM education, covering a broad range of fields, but not any, like really the health aspects of STEM. That's more covered by the National Institutes of Health. And currently the stipend that you get is $37,000 a year. But if your institution, for example, in higher cost of living areas, has a standard grad student stipend that's higher than that, your institution is expected to fill that gap for you. The program also gives some support for tuition, but again, your university is expected to fill in the rest of that tuition gap if there is any for you. And so you're considered an NSF fellow if you successfully apply for up to 5 years. But paid for 3 of those years of your choice, split among those 5 years. So if you're a PhD student, you would have to get funding and from your advisor or some other way for your remaining years that you're a grad student. Throughout your entire time as a fellow, NSF-GRFP does occasionally provide other funding opportunities like internships with federal agencies or companies. You don't have to be currently funded to apply for those. And overall, the application requires either your plans for grad school if you're a senior undergrad or a post-bachelor degree, but not yet in grad school, or your current grad school status, transcripts, a personal statement, a research proposal, letters of recommendation. I think you can no longer submit a GRE score, the standardized test that you usually have to take for grad school, although that requirement has, I think, changed a lot of places since COVID. And there are no interviews involved in this process. You do have to have a grad school admission or enrollment by the fellowship acceptance deadline listed on the website. And so there are eligibility criteria. You do have to be a US citizen, US national, or permanent resident to apply. Your field of study that you're aiming to go into in grad school has to be in the listed fields of study. And I think there are other eligibility criteria that are listed in more detail on the NSF-GRFP website. In terms of when you can apply as a senior undergraduate student. You cannot really apply before that because you do need a grad school acceptance, like shortly after you're notified of this fellowship acceptance. Or you could have a bachelor's degree but be working, and you could apply in that way. Or you could be a first or second year grad student and apply. You cannot apply both as a first year and second year grad student, though, only once during grad school. But you can apply twice, once as an undergrad and then in grad school. And deadlines for this program are in the fall. I believe they're in October, kind of staggered by field of study. And you hear back in the spring. Sometimes the notification date is quite late. I personally heard back April 8th, which is 1 week before the typical April 15th grad school acceptance deadline, when you have to decide which school you're going to at most grad schools. So if you maybe were not accepted at any grad schools, but you got this fellowship, you have to kind of scramble to email you're at the grad school department. Hey, I have funding. Will you accept me now? Doesn't give you that much time if they notify you too late. But they try their best, I think, to notify you by March. And who's actually looking at your applications? People have to apply on the NSF website to be reviewers. They have to be either have advanced degrees or have been working in a field of study for a long time. Cannot be current students or postdocs. So your application will be reviewed by someone in your field of study. And there's quite a long list of fields of study. So for example, if you're applying in the coastal science or coastal engineering realm, someone in that overall realm will be looking at your application. Important to note that applications are grouped and compared based on your educational status. So if you're a senior undergraduate or kind of in between undergrad and grad school, you're put into different groups versus first year of grad school and second year of grad school, if that makes sense. Overall, you need to be very careful with following the formatting and length and margin guidelines on the website. You cannot correct this after the application deadline. And online, I have read about people whose applications were disqualified because their margins are very slightly off from the requirements of the personal statement and research proposal. I recommend using some bolding and outlining in both of your statements for emphasis sparingly, but definitely bolden and or outline the headings for different sections. In both statements, you need headings for intellectual merit and broader impacts, both of which I'll talk about in a moment. You do have to, in your research plan document, describe a gap in the research in your field that you're addressing and the methodology for how you will address that and fill that gap. So I recommend brainstorming ideas for that proposal with people in your field or your research advisor if you have one. You don't actually have to carry out this research, but maybe do this a few months ahead of time just to let ideas start to simmer in your head. You should use the NSF GRFP merit review principles and criteria on the website to shape your statements. They go into more detail on what intellectual merit and broader impacts means. And overall, just try to make it as easy as possible for reviewers to score you on these. Again, remembering, the application process, the application package that you submit is what will, determine how you'll be scored and whether you'll get the award. There's no interviews. And remember to ask for feedback on your statements from professors, family, friends, maybe. And you do need another recommendation. They do have hard deadlines for that, so ask for them early and send reminders as needed. So I'll briefly go over some of the major components of the application, those two statements that I mentioned, starting with the personal statement, more formally called personal relevant background and future goals statement, where NSF wants you to build a story of your experiences, especially in research and relating to your field of study, your achievements, goals, any obstacles you've overcome. You have 3 pages to do this, which is a decent amount of space, especially compared to the personal statements you have to submit anyway for grad school applications. So those, if you're senior undergrad applying to grad school or bachelor degree holder, this statement kind of synergizes with your grad school application, which is nice. I would recommend consider starting the statement with some kind of hook or anecdote to engage the reviewer and get their attention, maybe a personal or research experience relevant to your field of study. Maybe you discovered something interesting or unexpected in your research, or just a personal experience that motivated you to do what you're doing. And maybe consider looping back to that anecdote or that hook at the end, injecting your own personal voice into this statement. You must have sections titled intellectual merit and broader impacts. I recommend bolding these to stand out and putting these at the end of your statement, along with a short section about summarizing your future goals. And what I mean by intellectual merit is it's somewhat ambiguous, but what are your qualifications to do research in this field of study? Your coursework, the research experiences that you've had so far, and your potential as a researcher, I suppose. And broader impacts is a little broader. It refers to any outreach or educational activities you've done, how you've communicated the results of your research, the actual broader real-life impacts of your research, and how you engage a wide variety of audiences and groups with your research and outreach activities. So you can include specific examples of how you of outreach you've done, or maybe you've presented at conferences or workshops, or how you published papers, and perhaps how you intend to continue these activities moving forward in your career. Oops. And now for the research plan statement. So in this statement, you're proposing a course of research to address research questions and test hypotheses. You do not have to actually do this research in grad school, but pretend as if you are. Like people apply to NSF for funding for their research and have, expanded versions of this in their application packages. So I recommend structuring it in a way that I've written here, where you start off with a motivation, definitely cite some literature, some references relating to the gap in knowledge that you're trying to fill, and how, why this issue is perhaps important, kind of engage the reviewer in that way. Overarching research question, objective or gap that you're trying to address, a hypothesis that you might be testing. Again, I recommend brainstorming ideas for this with other people to see their thoughts and to kind of iterate on this overall summary of how you're going to approach this, and how you will know kind of conclude this research, metrics for success of this research, or whether you've tested it fully or not, as well, and then go into more details of how you're going to carry out the research. I recommend mentioning specific methodologies or equipment or algorithms, depending on what you're doing. And you do have to have, again, specific separate sections for intellectual merit and broader impacts. Intellectual merit means how is this addressing like a novel question or a gap in the literature? How big of a jump is it making? I guess. And broader impacts, again, it's a little broader, but what importance does this research have for the real life? How will you carry out educational and outreach activities to share this research and talk about educate about your field of study in general? How will you engage diverse groups about this? Again, you don't have to actually carry this out, but just think through some ideas for that. And I recommend including a useful graphic representing your research question or methodology. My research statement, it was in the coastal engineering sphere, was about marsh terraces, salt marsh terraces, and I included a picture which I've copied here in the top corner of the figure I used, where I just kind of had a visualization, a photo of what I meant by that, because some reviewers might not be very familiar with salt marshes, as well as the scale of how tall it can be. And I related this to the future of marshes under climate change and sea level rise, and investigating that. A graphic is not required, but I do recommend it. You are required, I believe, to discuss briefly the realism of completing your research, either using the equipment in your research lab if you're a grad student, or a potential equipment in your lab if you're applying to grad school or shifting from master to PhD or something like that. So if you don't know for sure what equipment you'll have access to, maybe mention communications you've had with potential grad school advisors, or look at the laboratory websites, the facility websites of universities you're interested in, and point to those. Pretend as if you'll be at that university conducting this research. And again, don't brush off either into the intellectual merit or broader impacts sections. They are rated equally. These two things are part of every NSF application for grant money, from NSF DRFP up through professors, with decades of experience applying for funding. So you can find more detailed advice for structuring these sections, especially given the extremely limited space you have to do this year. And overall, I recommend avoiding obscure jargon. The reviewers that you will get will be in your field of study, but they may not be familiar with your specific research topic. And you can ask for feedback on that from someone outside of your field of study, perhaps. So I've talked about the main components of the application that are within your control. The other recommendation are also very important. So make sure those get submitted. In terms of my personal experience as a fellow, you have to submit every year, whether you've received NSF funding or not, I believe, a summary of activities you've done for the previous year. So each of those 5 years, or if you graduate early, like with a master's degree, you can end your fellowship early. And it doesn't take too much time. You list any publications or presentations you did, courses you took, achievements, other activities. You write up a summary of this. You submit a signed form from your advisor. It's not really graded. NSF just wants to make sure that you're making progress and doing stuff, I guess. You do have to inform NSF when you graduate. You can't just keep receiving NSF funds afterward. Usually NSF funding years start at the beginning of summer or at the end of summer. And probably you might not be graduating at the exact time where it lines up with the end of the year. Again, there are sometimes funding opportunities available to fellows that are posted on the NSF GRFP portal. COVID reduced this aspect a lot for me. They didn't really have any available for the first few years that I was a grad student, and I think they retired one program during that time. So I don't have much experience to talk about on that subject. MIT, where I was a grad student, has a lot of NSF fellows, but there was never really a feeling of a cohort or official programmed activities. This may be different at other universities, but yeah, compared to the Knaus Fellowship and the SMART Fellowship, I think there's less of a connection between fellows in that way. One important note here is that while you can apply to other federal fellowships, you cannot have multiple federal fellowships at the same time. So another popular fellowship people apply to is the NDSEG. It's related to the Navy and the Department of Defense, I think. But you cannot get funded by both that and NSF GRFP if you receive both of them. You have to decline one of them, sadly. I did not apply for NDSEG, but just something to keep in mind. So overall, taking a step back, I've given some advice on the major components of the application, but I'll include a few more points here. If you're not currently in graduate school and you're either post-bachelor's degree and working, or you're a senior or junior undergrad, perhaps, and planning to apply next fall, consider at some point next year reaching out to potential grad school advisors to ask for openings in their lab for the following year. Maybe check their websites first if they already have this information there. And when doing so, if you're eligible to apply, let them know that you're applying for NSF GRFP. They might get excited about that and even offer to help with your research statement. So in order to do this, you should probably email them by August or September next year at the latest, since deadlines are in October, and to give them time in case they do offer to help to look at your statement draft. And this fellowship is quite competitive, and there is some randomness involved in what reviewers you get. And depending on what field of study you are, there might not even be that many reviewers, I suppose. So they might have to broaden which reviewers are allocated to application. So definitely apply for other opportunities like those that have been described in this webinar. You can research online for other opportunities based on your current educational and personal status. The Ford Foundation fellowships, NDSEG, Hertz fellowship are all common ones. And I want to emphasize, think carefully about those intellectual merit and broader impact sections. That is how reviewers are supposed to score. The list of criteria and under those categories are how they score your application. So you want to make it easy for them to score you, especially if they're reading like a couple dozen other applications around the same time, and treat those two equally. Don't brush off one versus the other, if that makes sense. So thanks for listening. You can let me know if you have any questions. For very program-specific questions, the NSF GRFP solicitation on the nsf.gov website has a lot more details. Your university's fellowship office or an equivalent office probably might have some resources for this. Definitely search online for collections of example research and personal statements. I did this, keeping in mind that requirements may change year to year. One well-known source I've linked here is Alex Hunter Lang's website. Has a pretty long list of example statements from a diverse range of fields. And if you wanted some examples, perhaps from a coastal engineering sort of field of study, you can reach out to me and I can send the statements I submitted, but keeping in mind that they are from the 2018-2019 cycle. So some things may have slightly changed since then. But thanks for listening.
Rachel, thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, a really good overview of your National Science Foundation experience. We do have a couple questions in the chat, and I know it's 2 o'clock, so if anyone needs to sign off for previous commitments, please feel free. But Rachel, if you're okay with it, I would like to still allow you to have some question and answer time.
Yeah. So Sydney
Awesome.
asks, oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, go ahead and highlight Sydney's questions. I'm happy to answer or ask them, or you can just read them in the chat yourself.
Sydney asks, what was the most rewarding part of your NSF experience? I think one nice thing was just getting the award and feeling like, you know, some people who are very accomplished and advanced in my field of study thought that, you know, my research plan was decent or I was heading on a good trajectory. Just that alone was rewarding, and then not having to worry too much about funding for the 5 years of my PhD, only for 2 years, I guess. But it made it easier for my advisor, and it let me explore certain research projects and questions that I might not have been able to if I had to be funded by specific grants all 5 years. You have a little more flexibility in the research that you can take on. Keeping the NSF-GRFP does not, you know, give funds to carry out this research. It funds you and your tuition, though. But it can make it easier to get funding for that from like smaller grant amounts. How much? Leanne asks how much time I spent on preparing the application, how far in advance I started working on it. Were there any workshops and resources available for applicants who need help writing it? I think I started, so the deadline for NSF-GRFP is in October, middle to late October, depending on your field of study. I think I started in the summertime, just writing outlines of both statements and then kind of starting to fill them in, talking to my undergraduate research advisor about ideas for the research statement, and then iterating on it. And then once I had drafts that I felt confident about, I sent them out for feedback from my research advisor and a couple of other professors and a friend who used to be an English teacher. So she was really good at writing and giving feedback on writing. The University of Delaware, where I went to undergrad, I'm sure does have resources, and being a large state university, probably has a fellowships office and resources for applying to NSF-GRFP. Grad schools want you to come in with an NSF-GRFP, so they want to help you succeed in that. Even if your office doesn't have specific NSF-GRFP resources, he probably has a writing center of some form. So they're probably familiar to some extent with this application too. So definitely check out your writing center if available. And there are a lot of online resources and blogs, people who share their statements and give their thoughts, as well as, I think, in some cases, reviewers who also give their thoughts and advice about the process. Yeah, I recommend starting in this summer, and don't forget about those letters of recommendation. Professors are busy, or professionals are busy, and they can forget, and ask for those ahead of time.
Awesome. Rachel, thank you so much. I think that was kind of a wonderful overview in more of the research focused portions. Obviously, every single program that we discussed today has a research component. And I think one thing that you emphasized really well is how important it is for us as engineers and scientists and coastal advocates to have a great command over writing, because yeah, that might be, especially for those of us that are engineers, might not be something that we would anticipate requiring in our careers, but writing is so important. I find it in my job, and I'm sure Brennan is able to attest as well, being at the Army Corps. So I want to give a huge thank you to all of our presenters today. Thank you also for all of you who are attending this workshop. If there's any follow-up questions, the presenters' contact information is going to be in the information that we sent out after this presentation. And if there are no other follow-ups, I just want to say thank you again, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Rachel, for presenting, and thank you guys all for attending.
Take care, guys.